Oh, God, that
We're
is.
back. We're back. And look who I am.
Oof.
I don't look like Royal. Ethan Skolnick after the Miami Heat win against the Kings tonight, 105-104. Got Michael Christian up there on the left. I got Ricky J. Mark. We'll be joined by Marco Romo. We've got Adam Barai producing, probably bitching at me on the chat right now. And I think Jonathan Roundlick is going to join us. Night off, I think, for Toledo and Sylvander, but we'll see. I know Greg was on the pregame show. Again, the Heat win 105-104 tonight. Jimmy Butler in his return after missing 10 games. We called that he would be back tonight. Thank you. You're welcome. 38-7 tonight. 30 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. Bam Adebayo, I think, had 17 and 13, I believe, with 3 or 4 assists. But a few things I want to get to tonight. One, obviously, Jimmy was tremendous, and we'll get into the difference that he makes. I was a little confused at the end. I'm not one to really criticize Spoelstra a lot, but this was not his finest performance. I don't really understand how he allowed Max Strus to be singled up on De'Aaron Fox for essentially the entire fourth quarter, which to me is the only reason that this game even went down to the wire. So I don't really get that. I thought it was interesting that he started Okpala tonight with Butler, but then didn't stay with him. I thought it was interesting he went with Vincent over Nunn tonight.
He played 7 minutes, KZ. 7.
Yep.
7 minutes.
And they were.
We appreciate that. But so there were some strange decisions tonight, but ultimately, oh my God, Chris, Jesus Christ! I just spent 6 hours at a birthday party with 6-year-old girls. Okay, I don't want to take that crap. Tonight.
That's not a very Christian comment. I'm just saying.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Ethan has good Wi-Fi. No, it's the same as always. All right, but let's get to it. Let's start here with Jimmy Butler tonight. I didn't know how much he was going to play because they were close to playing him on Thursday. There was a decision made later in the day that they weren't going to bring him back unless they felt he could go 100%. They didn't want a situation where his body wasn't quite there yet, and then all of a sudden he pulls a hamstring or something like that. Tonight, how many minutes did he play? It was high 30s, wasn't it?
34.
34.
Okay, so mid-30s tonight. And he made every big play for them tonight. I mean, he got to the line. I thought the thing that Crotty talked about the most that was the most accurate is he just settles them. He said his ability to get to the line and stop the clock allows them to set defense. I thought that really helped them because early in the game they were real scrambled defensively. But again, you saw this so many times last season. They get off to bad starts, but then Jimmy kind of feels the game, starts getting to the line, and it gets everybody comfortable. Let's just start with him, and then I want to get to some of the decision-making tonight because, again, you guys know I'm a Spoelstra guy. I don't know what this was tonight. Michael, what did you think?
So it was good to see Jimmy on the floor, right? Excited about that. Definitely want to see more of him as the season goes on. But my biggest worry is Jimmy was out there 34 minutes, his first game back since, whatever happened to him, since losing all that weight, since having a really rough time. He goes out there, plays just as hard as he always does. Didn't he go to the locker room at one point? They had to send him to the locker room. Look, I love Jimmy. I want him to do everything he can. But if he has to put out this kind of effort for you to beat the Kings by 1 point, he's not going to make it to the end of the season. And if he does, he's not going to make it through the playoffs. He's just not. You should be able to beat the Kings by more than this and not need Jimmy to put it all on his back. Like somebody else has to step up, and it just wasn't happening. And so it was great to see Jimmy. I'm just worried about him for the long term this season.
Well, look, we know what happened to him. So, I mean, we've all kind of danced around it. But
I haven't said it because you haven't said it. I'm just taking your lead on that one.
No, and I think we all appreciate that. I just think, to me, he didn't look frail tonight. Okay, he looked strong. It looked like he was confident in his body. So I guess if he moved past it, we can start to move past it. But Ricky, to that point, I mean, they need him to set the tempo. And I thought Bam, one of my questions too was how Bam would play in terms of his aggressiveness once Jimmy came back. I thought there were moments tonight where Bam was aggressive, and there were other nights where other times he faded to the background. I don't know what he was doing at the end of the game. He refused to give the ball up. There were a couple of times Hero was asking him for the ball, dribbling up the court. But he had the big block at the end. I mean, how would you assess the way the two of them played together?
So I would say uneven because he played 36. He played 2 more minutes than Jimmy, but took 8 less shots. 18 and 13 from your starting center is pretty good. But from a guy who you want to be your best player, I think you want, and this is going to sound like nitpicking, I guess, but I think you want a little more out of him. Tyler Hero played 40 minutes, and I think his second game back from his neck problems. Took 12 shots, made 5 of them, 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. They're going to figure it out, but tonight was one of those games where they didn't seem exactly like that kind of dynamic duo you were hoping to see from them.
Marco, beginning of the game tonight, the defense, what was that in the first quarter? I mean, what was wrong with it?
The defense?
Yeah.
It's the zone again. Crowdy mentioned it on the broadcast, actually. The Kings are one of the best teams in the league at the zone. Their points per possession is like 1.37. So, and Miami's kind of forced to play that zone considering the kind of team they have out there. They don't have any guy that's able to contain De'Aaron Fox at the point of attack. They tried KZ, but at the second half, Spo just didn't play him. So you're not going to have anybody out there to guard him. So you had Max Strus at the end. So you're going to give up those open threes, which the Kings are one of the best teams at hitting the open three. They're number 8 in terms of percentages. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to give up those threes, especially to guys like Buddy Hield, who have been on fire recently, that's going to happen.
But Marco, to that point, okay, let's dive into the KZ thing a little bit, because Spoelstra seems to trust him enough to spot start him, but not trust him enough to stay with him. Now, I know in the past, he's used players as kind of placeholders, right? But not a player like that. It's typically like using a veteran guy like a Harkless or a player like that.
Or a Leonard.
Used as a placeholder and then play somebody else. Why is he even bothering to start KZ if he doesn't trust him? Like, what was wrong in the 7 minutes with him defensively that meant he couldn't go back to him? And then we'll get more into the zone, because I hate the zone. So, I mean, that's just my feeling on it.
It feels like he has a very short leash, at least from like an outsider's perspective. And you don't really understand that, considering Max Strus doesn't get that kind of leash as well. So you're left there like, okay, he makes mistakes, but he's still giving you the defense on the other end. I will say this: KZ did have a lot of lapses tonight, which he's been prone to, but he was still guarded Fox really well. Fox wasn't getting to the rim at all in that first quarter. It was mostly the passing that was killing them. Mm-hmm. So it's still very confusing the way that leash is made, because you're going to have to play him eventually. This is your guy that you built up. You're going to have to do something with him. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind that it comes at the expense of a guy like Harkless, who's been pretty much the same. So you're going to have to roll with somebody.
You see, the thing with KZ is that he was rushing a lot. He was playing like it was one of his first games.
You're going to get that when you don't know when you're going to come out.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But the thing is with KZ, it's like, there were moments where, like, I counted 3 consecutive possessions that resulted in 3-point shots for the Kings, where he inexplicably left Buddy Hield wide open on a rotation, and then he got Jade on twice by De'Aaron Fox. That's 9 points. Not for a team that prides itself on defense, you give up 9 points in 3 straight. Yeah, I know. You give up 9 straight points in 3 straight possessions. Spell's most likely going to call a timeout. He's going to try to figure out who's the cause of it. If it turns out that that's KZ's taking a seat. I'm not sure that happened to Strus tonight in his 13 minutes.
No, but
I'm a KZ guy. I love him.
But what happened to Strus, Ricky, was getting switched out on Fox repeatedly in that fourth quarter, and that first step just absolutely killing him. He can't guard him. I mean, to me, the guy that they were missing. I mean, it was obvious how much they miss Avery Bradley right now. Like that, that he would have been playing those minutes down the stretch of that, because he's not playing none. He didn't go with Vincent. So it seems like he's going to go to the defensive side. I mean, the whole point of playing Okpala with Bam and Jimmy is to give you supposedly 3 defenders in the starting lineup with Duncan and Hero, because Alex and I always talk about this. They're okay with 2 bad defenders. They can't handle 3. Once they get to 3, it's
a problem.
And I guess
we've done that for 2 weeks now.
I know, but if you're deciding basically that KZ can't be that defender, this comes in. What's up with K Nunn not playing? I mean, I think that's purely defense. That's if you're going to play Vincent or Nunn, they're making a decision that the offensive gains you're getting from Nunn don't outweigh what you get from Vincent defensive. And what did you guys think of I think Gabe gave him some good minutes defensively. I mean, for the most part.
Yeah, but is Nunn much worse at defense than Strus? Like, I mean, Nunn can't be that far behind if he's behind at all.
I think it's size that he's going for there.
And also, he doesn't muck up the offense when he comes in. Strus at least plays within the offense.
Yeah, and Strus will give you. Strus is at least, I would imagine, a much better 3-point threat than KZ Okpala is at this point in his career. I mean, he did hit one, finished with 7 points. KZ took 2 shots, missed them both. There was also one other possession in which KZ was literally under the basket and for some reason decided to pass it out. No, lay that in. You need points. You need to score points
right there.
Yeah,
Marco's right.
That was the most culture. That was the most culture thing he's done so far, right? Yeah. But I agree with Marco. He's been overplaying everything because he doesn't know when he's going to get to play, right? So if he just makes the smart play and puts a hand up and the guy makes a shot anyways, he's trying to get a block, right? So that people feel like they have a reason to keep him on the floor. I honestly feel like this rotations that they're giving to KZ, to a certain extent, they're ruining him, right? He's just going to feel like he has to rush everything. He has to force everything. And the only way he's going to learn to get comfortable in game speed is in a game. And the past couple of weeks where you've had opportunities to play him, you didn't. You played Strus and Vincent instead. And now you've gotten to a point where you're playing Max Strus at the end of the game and you're squeaking out a 1-point victory because you got lucky on a couple calls and bounces down the stretch. Like that, it just doesn't make sense.
That's where you're hurt by the G League not being around.
Well, that's a big issue. And they made a decision with the G League and I talked to people inside the organization after they made the decision. They just felt they had too many other things to deal with this year. And and it wasn't so much about keeping the guys around. As much as they valued the G League, it was like they were trying to take care of home. And so they didn't end up going to do it. Let me ask you this, though. Kelly was, when they got to a set rotation before Jimmy went out, they had Olynyk as a starter, and they were running that bench rotation. I want to talk about Precious a little bit because I still think he needs to play more. But the bench rotation with Precious, Andre, Avery, who obviously has still been out, and I'm missing, and Dragic, who was out tonight. Those 4. KZ was not in the rotation. Kelly was a starter. When everybody's back, did they just go back to that? Because it seemed like that's what Spoelstra wanted to get to. It didn't include Okpala. It didn't include Harkless. It didn't include Myers. It included Kelly as a starter at the 4. Then you got your 3 bad defenders in the starting lineup problem again. But do you just go back to it, guys?
Well, I think Spoelstra, at least based on what I've seen in the past, he can be kind of stubborn with going to the rotations and the lineups that he likes and that he knows. I find it interesting. I was just thinking this into my head. It's been about 5 games since Kelly Olynyk has had a Kelly Olynyk game. Tonight he had 11 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. He kind of at least statistically, he made an impact. The last time I saw him play that way, the Heat won. He hasn't had that game during the losing streak. And when Spo sees that out of him, I feel like it kind of refreshes his playing time meter because he had 26 minutes tonight along with Iguodala. And, moving forward with Jimmy Butler back, Hero back, Bam back, and everything like that, I could see him going back to that well again and seeing if it works. That could come at the expense of Precious, but there's going to be a point where Precious, and I quote, and I'm just going to paraphrase Spo here, is going to force Spo to play him bigger minutes. Are we there yet? I think we're close. But
the Precious finish in transition where he had to go to the offhand is just
that was nice.
I just want to see more. But who do you think he wants to play more? Like, if you were to say who he wants to play at the 4, like, because he went to Kelly when he had everybody healthy. Right. Mm-hmm. But he also has been around Kelly long enough to know, like, it's not going to last. Okay. He'll get a game out of him, but he's not going to get 2. It doesn't seem like he wants to play Okpala. He didn't really want to play Harkless anymore when he was healthy. Myers had kind of played his way out of the rotation. Iguodala, he'd rather not start. I feel like it's Kelly by default, isn't it?
But Kelly, you said earlier, Ricky, you said a Kelly game. What are you calling a Kelly game? When he fills up the stat sheet or when he
when he fills up the stat sheet, he's aggressive. He's confident enough to shoot multiple threes. I mean, granted, he was 3 of 8.
Good thing,
right? Sure. But I think on this team, I think Spo will applaud Kelly for shooting those shots.
But hold on, because it feels like he takes out other people for taking those shots, right? And a Kelly game at this point has become a bad shooting night with some uneven defense and not enough rebounds to justify your size. Like, to me, that's a Kelly game ever since he joined the Heat.
Well, that's when he becomes unplayable, right? So
which has been most of his career with us.
It depends on who he's taking out for taking those shots, right? Like if it's Hero, he's not going to take Hero out because we know Hero's a shooter. If it's Gabe Vincent or Strus or whoever, Duncan Robinson, sure. Yeah, I mean, he's going to keep those guys in because they're known for shooting. I just know that if Kelly starts hitting them, then that just opens things up for everybody else. At least I'm just trying to be a Spo whisperer here.
I just don't think Spo knows who he wants to play at the 4, which is why he's been switching it out all season. The idea might have been Mo Harkless at the beginning of the season. Then it kind of looked like KZ in the preseason in that last game. It might be him. Then they went to Kelly. They even tried Myers. Nobody has a long enough leash to get more than one game. Then they all come out with either an injury or the health and safety. I don't think Spo knows. I have no idea what they're planning on doing with the 4 position.
The answer's not on the team.
It's not.
Answer.
Yeah, so he's just waiting. He's just doing it matchup based. Like the 4 is, if they're a smaller team, we'll play someone else. If they're a bigger team, we'll play someone else until we get the fix.
He did it tonight.
Man, I don't like the rotations. I just can't.
But here's the thing, just from talking to people in there, they didn't think the option was on the team last year either. Like when they got Jay, they didn't necessarily think that was the option. Okay, it just kind of evolved into that. And even when I talked to people 3-4 weeks ago, before all hell broke loose here, they said, "Listen, we went into the season with one position to fill. It's basically been a tryout for one position." And like I said, the guy that should emerge into that, I think, is KZ, but I just don't think Spoelstra's going to trust him enough this year. It almost feels like he's playing him because the organization wants him to play him.
Andre at 4? Oh, that feels too small.
No, that's what they thought when they traded for him, from the Grizzlies.
If they were thinking Andre at the 4, I think they were thinking too small.
No, in closing lineups, they were thinking that. Adam. As Adam's they weren't thinking it throughout the game. They were thinking in closing lineups that Andre would probably be their 4. I mean, again, this was a closing lineup game. Like, this is not a game that they could afford to lose. Okay, you can't fall to 6-13 by losing the Kings and wasting a Jimmy 38-7 game. And yet he was playing Max Strus down the stretch of this game. Like, that tells you, to me, it tells you everything that you need to know. I want to ask something else about the end of that game.
Ethan, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm looking at this quote from Eric Spoelstra regarding Kendrick Nunn. I'm just gonna read it verbatim. "We were waiting for his test results. At that point, he wasn't available in the first quarter, so I went in a different direction. It's just one of those unfortunate things. I guess if those types of things are going to happen, it'll happen to us." So it might have had something to do with a protocol. It might have been a protocol issue.
What's so weird about that is that, as we all know, he tested positive once before he went in the bubble. He did the contact tracing over the past couple of weeks.
Right.
Okay. And then he was let back into play. So, I mean, does everybody understand, too, how many bad problems they had? Remember in the bubble, this didn't really get reported, when Jimmy had a false positive in the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that day that he wasn't available? That was what that was. It was a false positive. Okay, and now Jimmy ended up actually having it. They've had terrible luck with all that stuff. So maybe he would have played Nunn. I mean, I don't know that I would have felt better about Nunn guarding De'Aaron Fox at the end of that game than Max Strus guarding Mark was shaking his head.
No.
So I'm not sure about that. But I do feel a little bit like, remember a couple of years ago where they had like 6 2 guards? And it was like, they had Magruder and they had Waiters and then they brought in Dwayne. They had all those, Tyler Johnson. And it was like with Eric, it was like you could criticize him every night because he didn't have any good options. So it was just like whichever one he chose to play. I feel like that's where they're getting to at some of these positions. They're getting.
We had that problem a while back when we drafted Wade. Didn't we have a bunch of 1 and 2 guards on the roster at that time too?
Well, yeah, Levitar doesn't like to remember the fact that he wrote a column on the night that they drafted Wade saying they made the wrong decision because they had Eddie.
It didn't make much sense. Now it does, but at the time,
but they moved Wade to the point, and even if you were an Eddie lover like I was, okay, I was a big Eddie proponent. You knew he wasn't the guy long term. And that's a great comment. Adam wants our team to fail. I like that comment. Let's highlight that.
Look, Bimbo Coles wasn't going to be the future. The guy was like 35 at that point. So,
well, I'm with you. All right, but here I want to get to something at the end of the game, though. As great as Jimmy was, Adam, I agree. As great as Jimmy was, you still had a play at the end of the game that reminded me of last season. okay, which was Jimmy somehow got trapped in the corner, had no good options, and had to dump it off to Duncan. What happened on that? They got away with it but I'll let any of you guys start. What happened on that play?
I'll let Marco take that one.
What was that supposed to be?
I think they were trying to set up Bam Jimmy pretty much pick and roll on the side, but Duncan was just standing there, so they were like, "Oh, we can't run it here." They were like halfway caught in between what they wanted to do, so Jimmy kind of just improvised there. But what I want to see is a clear out for Bam, because him at the elbow is actually one thing that he's not going to turn the ball over, which he had trouble with. So I'm more comfortable with that than whatever the hell that was.
Right.
Well, and he's had some great buzzer beaters so far this season, right? So I'd rather have him hold it until the very end, take up a shot.
Well, you got 3 options at the end of games with Goran not in there, right? You basically got Bam, who can initiate. You've got Bam, you've got Hero, and you've got Jimmy, right? Who do you got? We've seen Tyler do it. I mean, who do you rank them in order? Who do you feel most comfortable with of those 3?
Wait,
ranking them
as the initiator.
You talking
as the
about
initiator?
You talking about Jimmy, Bam, Hero?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say Jimmy, then Bam, then Hero.
I don't know. About that.
I think I go Hero, Bam, and then Jimmy. Because Jimmy seems to try to force it too much until he gets inside, and then he tries to force out some kick, and then it's just not. I don't like it personally.
The kick behind his head. You're not a fan.
Yeah,
of that?
I just listen. He gets all it. He gets to the paint, and then he just jumps up like, "Who's open?" And it's like, dude, you're in the air. Chill.
I got to go with the guy.
That's a Dwayne Wade move.
Yeah. No, he's got a lot of Dwayne in that. Although, yeah. Well, look, Dwayne's percentages weren't as good late in his career as people thought they were. Marco, what would be your order?
I guess it depends on matchups. Tonight, if it's like what Bam had, he had Rashawn Holmes on him, and I love Rashawn Holmes, but I think that's what I would have gone to.
You love the most random players, Marco. Rashawn Holmes. You were talking about Nicholas Batum the other day.
Rashawn,
he knows the game.
Rashawn Holmes would help the Heat a lot, actually.
He's like what Precious is like currently. Like he's a better version of Precious.
Undersized athlete.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll go Bam tonight, just for tonight. Bam, Tyler, because I don't know. I just trust Tyler to not turn the ball over. And to he's really good at the mid-range, which is what you get late in the game. They're going to give up the mid-range. They're not going to give up a layup or a three-pointer. So he's the kind of guy that you trust late in games.
And Jimmy's the worst mid-range shooter out of those 3 by a decent amount. Yeah. So
Jimmy had that one mid-range jumper early in the game that I don't think it made it halfway. That's where I was kind of wondering.
That was bad.
I was kind of wondering where the legs were. But overall, like I mean, look, he was excellent tonight. There's no question about it. He was excellent tonight. I didn't really want to see him play this many minutes tonight, but I still had concerns about how certain guys played off of him. I know Duncan had the 4 threes. There were a lot of times defensively, Duncan was caught out of position tonight, which I'm going to watch. I'm going to rewatch it again later, but he seemed to be a step slower than usual defensively tonight. But ultimately, the Nunn thing is interesting because I guess he would have played ahead of Vincent. Maybe I don't know. I thought Gabe gave him good defensive minutes. But I do feel like a consolidation trade is where this is heading, and I kind of feel like the impression I got from talking to high level people in the organization a couple of weeks ago was they wanted to see the team relatively whole before making any big decisions.
If that happens.
And this is relatively whole. I mean, you didn't have Goran, but you're probably going to get him back in the next couple of days. And I think once they have Goran and Avery, they'll feel like, okay, we have enough to actually evaluate what this thing is. And it's just clear they need a 4. All right, so let's tone down the Beal stuff a little bit because, again, until he asks out, until it's more than just his wife sending out cryptic tweets, which are really about the officials most of the time, and I feel like she's playing with people. Is there a 4 that can be easily had that you think would make a big difference playing next to Bam, where they can stop this sort of Russian roulette that they play night to night? Is there I don't think John Collins is attainable. Okay, so are there names out there that can help?
I think PJ Tucker was a name that I was considering, that I would be considering if I were the Heat front office.
But they're good.
That's the thing. That's the thing. If this were like 6 games ago before they went on that 5-game winning streak, I would have said, yeah, maybe PJ Tucker in a couple of weeks. But now it seems that they could they could realistically make the playoffs in the West if eighth or ninth seed, a play-in game or whatever.
That all could
other
change
than
in a
him.
week, though.
Of course, no, of course. But other than him, man, Marco, I'm sure you got names, man.
I kind of have a list almost.
There it is.
So there's like Otto Porter Jr. is a guy that I've kind of kept my eye on, but you don't know what that price will take. If the Bulls will be like, no, yeah, we'll give him away because we kind of want to, and if they don't, you could ask for Thad Young, but I don't think Thad Young moves the needle that much because he's not a volume 3-point guy, which is why I'm more into the Otto portion of the side.
Porter makes a lot of money though.
Yeah, but you can match salaries. It's a 1-year left thing, so you're pretty much fine with that.
But Marco, is it even about? I want you to continue the list, but I understand that you want a 3-point shooter next to Bam, somebody who can stretch. PJ would be perfect, right? But to me, it's not even about that. It's just somebody who can protect Bam on the boards a little bit. I mean, just be a stout defender on switches. Like I'm not. They're not getting John Collins. You know what I mean?
That's where I think you can go after Thad Young then. If you don't mind the lower, he still put up a 3. Like guys will still, but he's also a very good defender. He's been actually a really good secondary playmaker for the Bulls. So I think that's where you can go if you're willing to go like cheap, pretty much. You're gonna have to pay a lot for like a guy for that kind of like range, like a John Collins. You're gonna have to pay, and you don't know how much you're gonna pay.
I mean, I feel like he's not a 4, but I'd look at LaMarcus Aldridge, right? Because then I'm sure they have, and I'd try to look a little bit more into it, just because I think he and Bam can both kind of space the 4. I think he does help with rebounding, and my thing there is everybody's talking about a 4. I would think about a 5 that can stretch, right? I would think about a 5 that could maybe do a little bit more spacing, just because the rebounding. I mean, your second best rebounder is Tyler Hero. You've got to get some more production out of that from whoever else plays on the big side of things, So I'd think about a center that can kind of shoot the mid range.
David Smith comes with an interesting comment. I mean, would the Kings give up on Marvin Bagley this soon?
I mean, his dad said he wanted out.
Well, I know.
But I don't know what that means exactly.
But Bradley Beal's wife wants out too, and that's even closer. So whatever.
I mean, you could ask for Harrison Barnes. He's available.
What is Harrison's number though?
I don't know. I think he only has one left.
One left, yeah. I think he's got one left. Another name that comes up if the Knicks fall out of this thing is: would you make a run at Julius Randle?
Absolutely. Julius Randle is a guy that I think we probably could have signed if we chose not to re-sign James Johnson. I believe they were free agents at about the same time. Just look at what he's doing for the Knicks this season. He's making the Knicks, relatively speaking, respectable compared to what they've been doing the last few seasons. I mean, he's one of the reasons why. I mean, my goodness, in many ways he would have been a considerable upgrade over James Johnson. Would have given you a lot of what James gave you. Right. Probably not as good from deep. I have to look at the stats just to make sure. But he could have been the starting 4 even now.
Yeah,
I want to push back on that though. Mm-hmm. I think James Johnson, what he was then, is actually the guy you want right now.
Right. Before he was re-signed.
Okay, that I'll agree with.
But that's like, hindsight and all that other stuff, right? But Randall, I mean, Frank Almanzar, please forgive me if I butchered your last name. I don't know if I'd call him a star, but he could make a case for an all-star berth this season. I don't think he'll get it, but he's putting in the work this season. I think he could be starting now.
The problem with JJ, though, if you go back to JJ was a starting power forward for this team, and he was putting up 2 rebound games consistently. Like, I mean, again, it depends which – I mean, Randall, to me, as a secondary playmaker in the front court along with Bam, is a plus. But you're right; he's probably priced himself out of their range at this point. I mean, I think that's the issue here. But I mean Collins. What would you pay Collins because if you trade for him, you're paying him, you're extending him.
Right?
Is he worth it?
I'm talking about John Collins from Atlanta. Here's the thing.
And from West Palm Beach, yes.
Yeah, I see. The thing is, he's relatively young. What's crazy to me is that Julius Randle's only 26. John Collins is even younger than that. I think if you trade for John Collins, it's possible you have your front court locked up for quite a few years if he pans out. I don't see. I mean, if Atlanta's willing to part with that, I don't know what they would demand out of us. Maybe Precious, maybe something. I don't know. I don't see them giving up a young prospect like Collins for someone like Myers Leonard or Kelly O, unless they want cap relief for a big run. But I don't know. I would like it. I wouldn't say no to that.
Precious would be the lead piece there, I would think. I mean, so you're basically making a decision that you'll take what Collins is now as opposed to what Precious will become.
Which actually, sorry, going back to, I don't know why I didn't think. Why not just play Precious at the 4? Like,
That's what I've been saying.
I know we've talked about it forever, but okay. So here's my thing with Precious. If you're saying Precious is just Bam 2.0, right, and you can't play them together because you haven't yet, then what you're telling me is we got a first round pick for a guy who's constantly going to be coming off the bench, who's probably not going to be a 6th man of the year with the way he plays. I have no idea why you haven't even tried them once together.
6 minutes. 6 minutes.
Like, I don't understand. Just play them.
I mean, Michael, if I could, I'm the one who asked Riley about this in his presser. Do you think that the two of them can play together? And he jumped to it. He says, yes, we do.
So, in an ideal world, you want Bam in that situation to be the stretch 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
He develops the 3.
So you're just waiting for that, essentially.
I mean, I've been saying for quite some time now, if Precious is able to develop a consistent long-range shot, and dating back to what I've seen from him all the way back in high school through college, I think it's possible. Then, yeah, I think he becomes a lot more playable.
Those two is Bam. But the shooters between those two is Bam. Bam is the shooter. I give him the ball out there. Tell him start taking the threes. Just do it.
Sure, but I want all my players to have, multiple types of scoring options. But, I don't just want Precious to be a rebounder.
But Ricky, as the resident historian here,
if he's hiding that lineup, he's waiting way too long.
No, I think he's waiting. I agree with Michael. I mean, look, Ricky, as a resident historian here, you know that the Heat have talked many times about playing bigs together over the course of time, and they never end up doing it. Remember when they brought in Zoe to back up Shaq? Okay. And there was all this talk. I remember writing stories about this, how the two of them were going to look together. You could play Zoe at the 4. It didn't happen. Okay. Zoe was basically, they talked about it when they brought him in. And essentially, I think Pat tried it a couple of times. And then it was, all right, Zoe is Shaq's backup. Okay. And they even had another big in Doliak. So they could have played the two of them together, rotate them. And it was a time when you played more bigs. They didn't do it. Consistently, they talk about this idea of playing bigs together. And it hasn't ended up happening. And Spoelstra is less inclined to do it than Riley was, okay, because he believes more in the whole space thing. So it's just not something that ultimately ends up happening.
Thank you, Bless.
But thanks a lot, Bless. For Bless.
That's it's interesting you brought that up, Ethan, mainly because what you're saying about the bigs is that I would counter argue that Miami's greatest success in the last 20 years has come when 2 bigs were in the lineup. Chris Anderson and Chris Bosh, when they were starting together.
But those guys are like 2 to 3 inches taller.
If I'm not mistaken,
Bird didn't start. Bird came off the bench.
Yeah, but he played if I'm not mistaken, he played the significant minutes.
But they didn't play a ton together though. Like the way when they had the 12-13 team that took off, the 27-game winning streak. I talk about this all the time. It's when they had Bosh in there as the 5 with Haslam as the 4. Playing limited minutes, okay, and they were bringing Anderson, Battier, Cole, and Allen off the bench in every game, and Anderson always replaced Bosh. They played together sparingly, okay. They did not play a lot of minutes. That's why it was even interesting to me that Spoelstra played Bam and Olynyk so many minutes together 2 years ago, because it was inconsistent with what they've typically done. Once they went to the stretch 4 thing with Battier at the 4, they really haven't returned from that. And if you look at it last year where they made the finals run, it was with Jay at the 4. So it's not something that they typically do, but I'm with you guys. If you were planning on signing Bam to a max extension, which you were, then drafting a guy who's basically a clone who you don't feel like can play with him doesn't make a lot of sense unless he's a trade piece.
Right.
Okay? Because you're not trading Bam. So, and that's why I asked Riley the question, and Riley jumped right to it. He was like, we do think they could play together, but it's going to be up to Eric to figure out how that's going to work. Marco,
no, Bless. Come on.
Marco, get in.
Uh-oh. We might lose Tyler.
You really do have to look outside of the team for the answer you're looking for. because you're not going to find it on the roster. It's not at the very moment, at least, because until Bam maybe develops a 3-pointer, which, that's probably another season away. I mean, he still isn't even shooting trailing threes that he's getting open. So you're still not going to play Precious and Bam together. I don't get the obsession of trying to play another center with Bam. That's not. I get it sparingly, like maybe how Anthony Davis does in LA, but he also has a stretch 5 with him, like Marc Gasol. So you like back to those lineups with Bosch and Birdman. Bosch was the stretch big in that situation.
Right.
So you always had a guy that could stretch the floor. So you're going to have to look for that answer somewhere.
Let's go to the other problem place for this team, which is whether or not they really have a true point guard, which is something we've discussed quite a bit, and why the, why we've kind of talked about Kyle Lowry here a little bit, okay, on various platforms, but do they have enough? I mean, when you see Jimmy handling, like, does this solve the problem? If you have Jimmy handling with Bam, or do you still, because you didn't have Goran tonight, I know that makes a difference, but Goran's not a true point guard either. Or do they still need another ball handler? Like, if we say you go outside the team, you could have one. You could get a 4. If Marco, if you're saying don't get a 5, but you get a 4 to complement Bam, somebody who can stretch, somebody who can switch, stretch, do those kind of things. Or you can go get a point guard to literally set up your offense, allow Jimmy to play off the ball a little bit more, allow Bam not to have so much responsibility, and allow Goran to just be a scorer. Which would you take?
I think in that situation, I'm going with the 4 because I think you have enough guys that can break down the defense. When healthy, you have enough guys that can initiate the offense. And the 4 is it's so much more of a glaring hole. And you've seen what it looks like when you have that guy. I mean, you went all the way to the finals with the guys that you have already. The creators like Bam and Jimmy and Hero and Tyler, Goran and Jimmy. You have all the guys that are able to initiate the offense and generate an open look. So I think the 4 is like way more of a hole, especially defensively, where it's a lot harder to find defensive-minded point guards. So when you find the defensive-minded point guard, they're most likely not a great shooter. Like you're gonna have to go for a 4, I think, because I think you have enough creators when healthy to pretty much take this team to where they want to go.
Well, Marco, the one name is Lowry. I mean, if you're looking for an elite defender who's also a guy who can make a shot, that's the guy. I mean, what is worth giving up for him?
For Lowry?
Yeah.
Wow. I think I'd give up
$30 million in the last year of his deal.
A protected first, that is. And that's the question. Are you willing to give up Precious for a year of Kyle Lowry? That's the question that I think the Heat are probably going to be facing.
I don't think you can give him up in that situation because you'd have to try out Precious as your answer at the 4 if what you're trading for is a point guard. You know what I'm saying? Because you still haven't found the 4. If you trade for the point guard, you're most likely not trading for another player who would answer the 4. You've got to try out Precious in that spot, right? So I feel like including him in that trade is you getting better at the point guard and completely giving up on finding the 4 a little bit. So
you're hoping that Toronto also works with Kyle because all his suitors are going to be teams that aren't going to be able to give up a lot of assets. So you're going to hope that they're like, okay, we'll take you to the team you want to go to, which is probably going to be one of 3 of Miami, Philly, or Los Angeles.
Right. No, they're going to take care of him. I know Adam's heard it. I've heard the same thing. Masai will take care of him. There's no question. And I said repeatedly, it's easier to make this trade for them in a season where he's not playing at home in Toronto. It would have been much more difficult to do that because he is. I mean, look, Kawhi won and he left. Pascal is still. They're sort of iffy on him still. Kyle's the guy there, and so that's one. I want to talk about one other guy though because I've kind of changed my tune on somebody. I didn't see DeMar DeRozan as a good fit for this team. But watching some of the things he's doing this year, shooting the ball better, he's passing the ball better. San Antonio's been better than expected. Would anybody make a run at DeMar, or is that just a luxury item at this point when we're talking about really needing a 4 and really needing a point guard?
If they throw in LaMarcus Aldridge, right? If we get some sort of package where I get both of them, absolutely. Like, no hesitation there. If I can get both DeMar and LaMarcus.
I mean, we already have Jimmy Butler. DeMar's not giving me what I need from deep. If I get, if I'm bringing in a wing, I would hope he can shoot. And I know we're not going to talk about Beal, so I'm not going to go there. But no, DeMar DeRozan doesn't do it for me. But not only that, I would, to kind of go back to the last thing, I'm a point guard guy. I want Lonzo. I want Lonzo Ball today, tomorrow, and for the rest of time. I mean, because here's the thing.
But you just said you wanted a wing that could shoot.
No, but listen, hold on. We have shooters on this team, right? But here's the thing. The reason why I believe we need a floor general on this team, someone who can get everyone involved, is that it means Jimmy doesn't have to worry as much about getting everybody involved. It means Bam doesn't have to worry about being a point guard. It doesn't mean we're going to force guys who are probably better at scoring, putting the ball in the basket with necessarily involving everybody else. I think once players are freed up to do what they do best, instead of burdening them with responsibilities on the floor that aren't necessarily part of their DNA right now, I think it makes the team a little better in the long run. Like, for example, an example that I'm thinking of, the mid to late 2000s Lakers. Before Pau Gasol arrived there, Lamar Odom was expected to be the Pippen to Kobe's Michael. Once Lamar was able to settle into that third option, almost 6-man role, he flourished. Right, and that was because he wasn't expected to do all these other things that weren't necessarily in his DNA. In that regard, that's one of the reasons why I would like to see a point guard on this team, because, well, we haven't had one since LeBron left, and it would be nice. And I think it'd be a lot easier for other guys to get involved. I just hope that, we don't miss Tyler for too long, because as we're seeing in the comments and based on what the post-game presser is saying, we could potentially lose him because someone close to him apparently tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, everybody's already speculating who that is. So.
Yeah, here's the thing with the DeMar DeRozan trade, right? Let's just say you got to close out a game. You're putting out your 5. If you're telling me you're putting out a 5, if his team is healthy and you've got Tyler, DeRozan, Jimmy Butler, Bam, and a 5th player that you can rotate depending on what you're playing against, I take that closing. Goran, probably, right? But if they're a bigger team, you could maybe throw in a LaMarcus if he gets thrown in, right? That's my dream scenario. Even if it is Goran, that's a pretty versatile team you're throwing out there. And 3 players that can play pretty decent defense. I'd take that lineup to close out a game over Max Strus even playing another 2 minutes ever again. Like, I mean, I think that's a pretty decent lineup.
I don't trust DeRozan in the clutch. I don't trust him.
But DeRozan's not the one we're going to in the clutch.
He's an option.
He's behind Jimmy and Bam and Goran and Tyler. That's probably the best 5th option you'd have.
That might be on paper. It looks like a lot of really good options, but who's hitting a 3 that you need if Hero's double teamed, or not double teamed, but if Hero's being given a ton of coverage?
Goran.
I think with DeMar, there's a lot of redundancies. You're just gonna.
We already have Jimmy Butler. But
we already have Bam, and we got
mean?
another one in Precious, right?
Well,
they want to know how to him. Like I don't see what the problem is there to then get Lonzo Ball, who can't shoot the 3 either. So we have the same problem.
Well, he had 7 the other night.
That was 1 out of 7,
right? And his jump shot has actually improved in the last few years compared to how it looked when he was a rookie. I'm just saying, based on where he is right now, you bring him to Miami, that's going to get better. You're bringing him to a team with a head coach that fixed Dwayne Wade's jumper and turned him into a knockdown shooter from mid range. I'm willing to bet that if Lonzo comes here, he becomes an even better 3-point shooter.
I mentioned that on the 5 on the 4 pod, that you hope that you can fix him like you did Jay Crowder for at least a year, and you hope that his
until the finals
be Marcus Smart, until the finals.
And he's still got a relatively high ceiling in terms of what he's capable of. Remember, this was the number 2 pick in the NBA draft. If you're able to get him for cheap, I think you're getting away with. I think it's highway robbery, especially if he develops in what you want him to.
Pat prefers the big point guard, even though I know I went with Tim Hardaway because he was the guy who was available, who he could rehabilitate. I mean, they've rehabilitated so many guys over the years. People forget when Timmy came here from Golden State, he was playing behind B.J. Armstrong. Old B.J. Armstrong in Golden State, and ended up being an all-star here in Miami, playing a totally different game. So I'm with you about how they can rehabilitate certain guys. I would be okay with the ball thing. the thing about I like DeRozan. The thing about DeRozan is he gives me kind of Eddie Jones, Jamal Mashburn vibes because you know what I mean? It's
I
like,
don't know enough about that because
passing to Clarence Weatherspoon with 8 seconds
up
left in Game 7
Yeah,
against
I mean-
New York in 2000. Like we don't need that.
Well, they did the numbers on DeMar 2 years ago, and the biggest variance in the entire league between regular season and playoffs in a negative sense was DeMar DeRozan. The biggest variance in a positive sense was Kawhi Leonard. And if you needed any explanation for why Toronto made that trade, that was the reason that they made that trade. I want to circle back to tonight's game, though. We're letting other people come in here with a comment, so I'll read some of them. Is tonight a 1-point win against the Kings with Jimmy having 38 and 7? Is this an encouraging performance tonight or not? Like, how did you guys come away from this?
Well, for me, I think the bleeding stopped, but the patient is still very, very ill.
Yeah.
The code is no longer like code blue, but he's still, kind of unconscious. Because here's the thing. We were supposed to win that game by 10 to 15 points. We ended up winning because Bam was able to make a clutch block at the end of the game. We're not where we need to be yet. We're not any closer to where we might have been last year. But look, at this point, we need to play a lot better in order to get to where we need to, because tonight wasn't acceptable. I was just telling Michael just before we went live, there was a certain kind of inevitability about a potential loss tonight that I was like, well, it looks like we're going to end up losing this one, because the last 5 games we start off okay, run out of gas, and then we end up losing it. That's pretty much how we lost to the last team we played.
Right. Well, tonight they started off poorly and then had a little bit of a blitz. I mean, Mark, do you feel any better about them?
No. There's still the same holes that there were before Jimmy got there. Jimmy was just pretty much like the tourniquet that stopped that bleeding before you chop your arm off in the playoffs eventually. So I think you still have the same questions. You're still wondering if, this roster is good enough. And that's what the team's wondering. They're like, oh, are we good enough since we're not good enough to beat the Kings? Like, with most of our guys. I don't want to hear about Goran not being there. You should beat this team without going out there, especially on a back-to-back.
Yeah.
You have to win these games by more than just a heart attack.
Well, I don't know that Goran on Fox would have gone much better for you anyway. So I mean, to me, the most distressing thing tonight is that he felt he had to play Max Strus down the stretch. Like, it doesn't even matter to me how Max played, but the fact that Max Strus was out there for the final 5 minutes of this game while getting cooked by De'Aaron Fox every single time, that's the problem here, and that's why Adam. Yes, I'm coming around a little bit to your side, because if he feels he has to go to Max Strus at the end of the game, to me, that's like a Spoelstra cry for help at this point. Michael, do you feel any better about it?
Nope. I'm in the exact same spot I was after the last game. What is maddening to me is the inconsistency. And I have no idea if this was one of the better performances they could have put on, considering the way we've been playing lately, or if this is as bad as it's going to get and we'll win the next couple games by maybe 10, 20 points each, right? Like, I get it. Everyone's a basketball team, right? Everybody was talking to me the other night about how I was saying it's like if I went out there and boxed a professional, and they're like, no, they're still NBA teams. But we were in the finals last year. My expectations for this year are if you don't make it at least out of the second round of the playoffs, to me, it's a failure, right? You didn't do good enough. And so if you're going to give me low expectations now, but you brought back this team and you were confident when you brought them back, I'm sitting here thinking, great, you beat the Kings by 1 because Jimmy bailed you out coming right off of being sick, right? Like, what are you going to do when you have to play a better team in a 7-game series and you're playing up and down again? You're going to lose that one too. So I feel no better.
You shouldn't need finals Jimmy.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think we also need to be very realistic about who we are as a team, because you could argue that Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Philly, those 3 teams got objectively better in the offseason. And to get to the semifinals, I believe, well, the semifinals, that means there are 4 teams left in the Eastern Conference. I mean, like I said before on a previous stream that, in like a Game 7 situation, all things equal, if we're fully healthy, bubble situation, I like my chances against one of these other teams because of how hard we work. However, I mean, if we're also being realistic, I don't think we're on the same level, and I think a lot of us knew that heading into the season,
But
thinking that
that's
Giannis was going to sign with us in the offseason, which he ended up not doing.
But that's my complaint. We knew this going into the season, right? And I'm not taking away the fight from this team. We play any of these teams in a series, we're going to give them a fight.
Yeah, we're probably not going to beat them, though.
Even if we had a worse roster, we saw that when we played the Nets and we didn't have Jimmy, right? We gave them a fight. I'm not doubting that. It's you came into this season knowing what you had on a roster, knowing that everyone else was going to improve and get better, and you decided we're going to stick with this because we think it'll work, and it blew up pretty quick.
No, but that's not why they stuck with it, though. They didn't stick with it because they thought it would work. They thought they could get internal improvement while trying to get Giannis. Like that's. I mean, this was.
Did they think this year though, or next offseason?
No, this year. I mean, you can't take that out of the equation. The decision was basically made to kind of hold the line because otherwise Jay Crowder would be here. I mean, that's the one decision. That was the line in the sand. You know, they offered Jay $14 million for 1 year, but they weren't going to pay him $18 million over 2 because they just weren't going to go into the second year. I mean, that's pretty much how this thing played out. The Jay Crowder decision told you everything that you needed to know.
They couldn't sign guys that weren't Jay Crowder, like Jermichael Green or Paul Millsap or Serge Ibaka, because they didn't know.
They didn't know. I mean, that's basically what this came down to. They didn't know, and I think they thought they had a better read on it because of Bam's situation, and they misjudged it. I don't think there's any question about that. The Harden thing, and I know, look, Adam, I know was controlling the comments tonight, so throw some more at me. But the Harden thing wasn't something they were anticipating. Damn it, I've given you Adam, I've given you credit on this. Nobody knew Harden wanted out until 2 months ago, so that wasn't in the Heat's sort of game plan at that point. Okay, their whole idea was Giannis. That was it. And Beal, they didn't know when he was going to ask out or not ask out, but they were trying to stay flexible for Giannis. Otherwise, like you said, they signed Jay or they signed a suitable Jay replacement. Instead, they were like, okay, Mo Harkless is available. We'll promise him some minutes and he'll work cheap. And there was no way that Mo Harkless was going to replace what Jay Crowder gave him last year. You know, the Avery Bradley move was an incremental improvement move. And it was also protection against Nunn, you know, not getting his game back. And so, to me, that one made sense. The Harkless move was kind of like, all right, we couldn't get Jay. We're going to try to make something out of this guy. And clearly that just hasn't worked out. And I mean, we're not even talking about him as an option, right? Like as a 4, like when he's healthy, like is he even an option at the 4? I mean, he's a spot player. 5-10 minutes for some defense. Okay?
I mean, we got a guy getting $10 million who's sitting on the bench with a shoulder injury.
Well, I mean, I don't even know what's up with that. They don't even talk about him anymore. That's the crazy thing. I mean, that is clearly just become a contract. Is Adam showing up? If Adam's showing up, I'm leaving.
I want to interject on one thing.
Okay.
Yes, the Heat mismanaged the whole situation this offseason, but to think that this team, you know, just because their plan A, which is Giannis, blew up in their face does not mean they have a plan B or a plan C. You don't go into a season
they always do.
Just one plan.
No, they do. But they made certain decisions based solely on the plan A. That's my point.
Absolutely.
They always have a plan after a plan after a plan. But the Jay Crowder decision and the decision not to try to find another player like Jay Crowder, like a Serge Ibaka, who they could have given 2 years to, who would have fit this team perfectly, okay, that was a decision based on Giannis. I mean, it's just that simple. It was based on their plan A's. I'm not saying they don't have a plan B, okay? They do. They always have a plan B. But that was the decision that was made at that point. Harden wasn't their plan B because they didn't know Harden was going to be available. So we can argue whether they should have done it for Harden. Let me ask you this, though, Adam. Like, I mean, you're getting on this thing about trading the depth. I get it. But they weren't going to be able to get those picks and pick swaps anyway, right? Not the ones that the Nets gave them, and not a player of the quality of Oladipo.
No, they could have gone it. Duncan's worth 2 firsts to a contender, and they could have gone and unlocked the 2 firsts from Oklahoma City, and then they could have also gotten the pick swaps that were required. And then Hero has more value than Oladipo. They could have absolutely done.
Has more value than Oladipo because he's locked in.
No, because he has 6 more years with the team, or 7 more years.
I mean, he's not better. I mean, I think that's been pretty apparent this year. So let's look at Houston. Do they do anything now? You know that situation.
I think they're going to wait and take a look at this team right before the trade deadline to see and assess what the team looks like and how far they're going to go. If they're in the playoffs, if they're on the border. If they don't make the playoffs, then Oladipo will definitely get moved.
I love that Adam's just a disembodied voice here. This is great. It's just
I'm the voice of reason.
Voice of reason.
You're
Voice of
like-
5 reasons.
Which one of the 5 reasons are you the voice at?
All of
You're
them.
like the voice on my shoulder. Oh, by the way, before I bolt here, I put up a thread. It did quite well tonight. I'm not going to make the announcement now, but I will make it on Twitter in the morning, asking people to find the worst possible takes from the Whiteside era, whether it was Spo versus Whiteside. I was expecting a bunch of straight Rich takes, but I got a few Pablo G radio.
Hey, Whiteside was the best player for the Heat tonight because when he was out there, man, did they take advantage of him.
Oh, no, they absolutely did. But there were some great comments on there. I can tell you that the ones making fun of of our friend Austin, of Trilly, and another one making fun of Nikias, that those will be ranked high in my order.
No.
I will be giving out a T-shirt to
The
those
Chef
who
Trilly one isn't real.
What's that?
The Chef Trilly one wasn't real. He was actually mocking Straight Rich.
I know exactly what he was doing, and I still might give it out for that reason. Trust me, I know that he was
All right.
mocking
Fair
Straight
enough,
Rich,
fair
which
enough.
I greatly appreciate.
Man, I love free swag. I'm just saying.
So I'm just saying we got the T-shirt there. How does Adam know that Duncan is worth 2 firsts?
I mean, when you shoot 43 or 44% from the field, then you're known as the third best shooter in the NBA. At the moment, you're worth 2 firsts.
You're worth
True
2 firsts,
contender.
but you're also unplayable at the end of games because you're shooting 28% in the fourth quarter this year and you're not defending.
And can't box out.
Put Duncan next to Giannis. What happens?
He loses in the conference finals instead of the second round.
There's no way Duncan Robinson gets traded to the Bucks, right? Like the Heat wouldn't make that move.
I get that, but just think about the scenario. Put
I
Duncan,
Yeah,
put Duncan in Philly with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Put him in Brooklyn. Put him, you know what I mean? Like, put him in LA.
Does Brooklyn have any assets left?
That's not the point.
That is the point.
I know what Adam's trying to say, but all those teams are like kind of like hamstrung by no picks.
Boston.
Yeah.
That one, I'll give you that one.
Yeah,
I think
they might still have something left.
They
Oh, well,
really love him in
they-
Boston, man. There's a lot about him they like.
I
He's
was gonna
from
say,
there.
You are white.
Yeah. And he's a New
Quite
Hampshire,
right.
he's a New Hampshire guy. So yeah, that would play out quite well. Look, Gordon Hayward has been doing great since January 6th. There's a lot of people pointing out. So there you go. All right, that's it for me tonight. You guys want to continue? You can continue. Roy will be back here for the next post game, I'm sure. Adam, I'm not even speaking to you. You have no face. You're just the voice over my shoulder.
Is this the first time you guys have talked in a while?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he's been dodging me on
Except for
every post game. Every loss, he doesn't show up.
So you basically haven't shown up all season, just like the Heat.
Excuse me. I do a pod. You realize during the week,
Mhm.
right? Like during the week. We just don't pod on the weekends because I don't know where Alex is out somewhere driving his lift around Wynwood. Okay, trying to avoid his 6th time contracting COVID.
God,
So-
jeez.
So
Yikes.
that's what we do. Duncan looks like Boston. That's a great place for me to exit. All right, have a good night, everybody. I'll give away a T-shirt. I promise.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
want that T-shirt.
Yeah, I want that
man.
Manscaped.
Oh,
Oh, snap. Damn.
What was that?
What happened to
All
Marco?
right, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the very first episode of Mark and Marco, where we talk about the NBA instead of just the Miami Heat. Marco, how are you doing this evening?
That was very weird. What was that?
Yeah, I don't know. What
He's
I
just
mean,
using the voice.
do you want to keep talking about the Sacramento Kings and how they're not making the playoffs either?
No, not
You
really.
know. All right, there you go. Eminem.
Wait, by either, are you talking about the Heat being the other one in that scenario?
I'm not going to answer that question.
So the doubt is starting to creep in. That's all. I'm looking
Honestly,
for.
not really, because here's the thing. I don't see a point in deliberately missing the playoffs because from what I understand, we don't even have our pick.
No, I'm not
So-
trying to miss the playoffs. I'm just worried that they will.
Yeah. So
Oh, man,
I mean, yeah, so welcome. Okay, it's fine. Welcome to the debut episode of Eminem, which is a very interesting setup.
There's a third M in here, but I'm fine not being included. That's cool.
Oh, 3. I mean,
I know. No. It was the Mark and Marco. Listen, I'm just a guest for now. It's fine. It's fine.
Who's the other? Who's Mark?
That's my last name, dude.
Okay. I was gonna say, are we going by first names or last names?
Look, it works. It works, man. It works.
Abdel, I am salty. Okay, deal with it. Gosh.
The views
Oh,
are dropping
jeez.
like flies.
Michael, Mark, and Mark.
And now Adam. Like, what do we?
No. He's in the back. He has his own show.
He has the power right now, so I don't know.
Hey, let him. Listen, I don't fear power anymore. You can boot me off right now. I'll just go watch.
Keep going.
I'll see you. Oh. Go ahead, do it again. It's whatever. So yeah, okay. So here's the thing, right? If you had to choose between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Milwaukee Bucks in terms of actually breaking through and making the NBA Finals, something that neither team has done since at least 2001, who would it be? I'm sorry, 2000. Yeah, 2001. Which one would it be in your book?
What were the choices? Milwaukee and Philly?
Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers. Because I have takes on both of them with regards to their viability.
Wow. I think I'd go Milwaukee. Barely.
I
think there's more question of who am I more scared of? And that's probably Milwaukee, considering what they added with Jrue Holiday. But I'll never trust Philly until I see it ever. But again, I'm with Milwaukee. I won't trust them until I see it ever.
You see, the funny thing is, for me, I'm just like, Philly is coached by a coach that hasn't seen the finals since 2008. He spent like what felt like over a decade with the Clippers, and they couldn't break through for whatever reason. Milwaukee's problem, unfortunately, seems to be centered around their star player and how all they got to do is form a wall, and he isn't as lethal as he would be during the regular season, right? I mean, honestly, I feel like for all that people have said about LeBron, I don't remember a season in which he was supposed to make the NBA Finals and he basically got swept out of the playoffs, because he lost to Orlando in 6 in 09, and he lost to, I think it was in 2010, lost in 6 to Boston in 2010. All right, so there was at least some chance. Milwaukee pretty much flamed out last season for reasons that are relatively understandable, but I don't know. I mean, at least in my book, I think these two teams are probably the best two teams in the Eastern Conference. I'm not really recognizing Brooklyn until they learn how to play defense, but I don't know. What's your take on that?
All right, I'm about to go, and I'll leave with this.
You see
Heat
this?
in 5.
I tried.
All right, that was Heat in 5.
You see that? I try to be proactive.
That was the shortest new show we've ever had. I feel like Adam has to hop in here now. But I think he's gonna say, "Oh, there he is." He's got to. Adam, it's just me and you, man. What do you want to talk about?
Play the ads, play all the reactions. That's what we'll do.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to stay while we're doing that, or are we like signing off? We'll play the ads and head out with that.
I mean, now would be a good time to talk about some trade targets while everybody left.
Yeah, I mean, I'd take anybody at this point. As long as the other team takes Nunn and Olynyk, I'm good. Send them.
Well, here's the one thing that I heard. It doesn't really help a lot, but
By the way, you need a face right now, man. Turn on your camera.
No, it's okay. I did hear that the Heat, Mr. Mo Harkless wasn't their first option, and that they had a contract in place with a certain other player who instead opted to go west, and it's not Jay Crowder. And he was supposed to fill in for Jay Crowder. The Heat had picked someone instead of Jay Crowder, basically.
And you're saying this person went west?
Yes.
Are we playing a guessing game and I can say names?
No, that's all I'll say.
Okay, so I mean, you're giving us nothing then.
Yeah, it was a really good option, though. It was a very good option, and he decided to go west. He had a contract in place with the Heat until the other team upped the offer, and he signed there.
I know which. I have an idea which player you're talking about. I have an idea for a couple, but I'm pretty sure I know which one it is. Got a bunch of people guessing in the comments, which is very interesting. Wait, Baby Shaq asked a really good question. Mo wasn't their first option. Mo was Alana's first option.
Yeah, I don't think.
We all know that. I mean, okay, look, everybody's going to be looking for a trade. If you had to put a percentage on it, or you had to give a guess, it feels like a trade's not going to happen until the deadline, right? It just looks like they're going to wait till then.
No,
seeing anything before then is very unlikely, right?
No, why the deadline? March 4th.
Oh, sorry, March 4th. I apologize. I know that's not the deadline, but March 4th is the start of the break, right? That like 2-week break they have.
Yes.
Okay, so anything happening before the break, though, anything happening in the next month is pretty unlikely.
I would say so, yeah. Unless they have a deal in place with Myers' contract or with the trade exception.
Right. And the best option currently has Stockholm syndrome in Washington. Right? He's brainwashed.
Dude is deranged. I don't know. Look, I'll say Bam's trying, but this guy just doesn't want to leave.
I really hope Bam is trying because he should. Like,
Absolutely.
you need to get him out of here. You need to get him out of there, right? Paul Pierce is now comparing himself to Bradley Beal, and that is not true in the slightest. Did you see that clip?
With Paul Pierce?
Yeah.
No, I did not.
Paul Pierce basically said in the clip, Paul Pierce goes, "Oh, yo, hold on a second. If Adam is Jarvis, I will take that because then that means I'm Iron Man, right? So I'll just trim all of this. This
is where we end the show, buddy.
Whoa, come on. I can be Iron Man. What are you saying?
Do you have anything else? Do we have anything else to add? Trade rumors?
I mean, I don't know anything. It would be you. So if you don't have anything else to add, then I don't think we have anything else.
No, just while we were on the show, I just heard that not a rumor. I just heard that this player had a contract in place and he decided to go elsewhere. But there was definitely they picked him over Jay, which was the important part. They picked this player over Jay, and they didn't want to give him the year. So I'm assuming it was a high number.
Got it.
So they had a few moves in play that they were going to make, but it just,
the offseason did not go the way the Heat wanted. We definitely know that. It was just everything came up very backwards from what they were going for.
Mm-hmm.
Things in their control and things out of their control. And with all that being said, hey, I'll speak my piece on tonight. I'll talk about it more, and I'll plug, since I'm the only one here, I have a radio show on Onside Radio. You guys can listen to that Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. I'll talk about it more then, but my piece with this game is, yes, it's a win. It's good to see the Heat winning, but I just didn't think it just wasn't good enough to change my mind. Did it change your mind at all, Adam?
No, not at all. This was a really bad win. I know people say it's not a thing, but you had a superstar Jimmy Butler performance in his very first game, and you win by 1 at home.
Yep.
That doesn't cut it for me for a team that his expectations are to go to the finals. Right.
And the likelihood, and this is just the way I feel about it, the likelihood of Jimmy making it out to the end of the season and really having full energy in the playoffs feels so low unless this team goes on a crazy winning streak and then can kind of rest him a few games here or there. Right. Like, the dude plays really hard, but we already saw his ankle get twisted earlier this season. He did get sick. Right. He has some stuff he's dealing with. I think the chances of him making it healthy, he's not getting any younger. They're not really good. They're just not.
Absolutely.
So with all that being said, hey, thank you guys so much for watching the post-game show. Don't forget to check out Biscayne Bay Brew and the Tropical Bay IPA. I'll try to do my best royal impression here. Manscaped, shave your balls, as he loves to say. What are the other sponsors? We just got Miami Grill as a sponsor. That's fantastic. Go check out their food. Best fries in South Florida. What other sponsors we got, Adam? Who did I miss?
I don't know. I don't pay attention to that.
That's fine. Thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate you being here. That'll do it for the 5 Reasons post-game show. You guys have a good night, and hopefully the Heat can pick up some more wins in this next upcoming schedule that should be hopefully a little bit softer.